Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cabernet and Kale. This is the podcast where we focus on things related to health and nutrition with a little bit of a rock and roll twist. So today I have a very special guest, Elizabeth Marberry. Hello, my love. How are you?
Hello, beautiful. I'm super awesome and excited to be here.
Good. I'm so excited to have you. So this is the inaugural episode for YouTube and the relaunch of the Cabernet and Kale podcast after a little bit of a hiatus from that as I focused on other ventures. And I'm really excited to have you on here so that we can have a really deep dive discussion about what it means to truly be healthy in a feminine way, in a feminine body, right? So I am so excited to have you here. Welcome, welcome. And I want to congratulate you as well on the launch of your new podcast, the Confident Feminine Body podcast, right? That was today, you said?
Yes.
Yay!
It's live today. And this has been a baby that I have been birthing for, it feels like years, but more like months, but it's been a seed in my heart for years. So
Yeah.
I am super, super excited.
That's amazing. So what kind of topics are you going to be talking about on this podcast?
So we are going to be talking about how to build your body confidence from within, because a lot of times when I talk to women about building their body confidence, they immediately go to their physical body, like
Right.
size of their thighs, or if they work out or if they don't work out, or if they eat healthy or they don't eat healthy. And that's actually not even, that's just a layer. But when I talk about confident feminine body, I am talking about not just your physical body, but your mental, emotional bodies, as well as your spiritual body, and how important all of that is.
Yes.
So we're going to dive into that. We're going to dive into how to lock in a movement practice that feeds your soul. I found that women a lot of times go when they tie working out in with the dieting or trying to shrink or fix their broken body, they wonder why they can never be consistent in their movement practice. So I'm super passionate about helping people to lock in consistent movement practices that like serve them on every level of their being.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about intuitive eating.
Yeah.
And I have so many awesome guest experts. You're going to be a guest expert, and I'm just so excited.
I love it. I love it so much. And I love the ethos and where you're going with this, right? Because so years ago, I was doing very similar work, like nutrition coaching and health and wellness coaching for busy executive, type A women. And I love when you talked about movement. And I always remember asking, like, these women were trying to lose weight and they're trying to get healthy, and they were on the diet roller coaster, and they were like on the treadmill, literally on the treadmill, and they hated every minute of it. And my question was always, okay, wait, if you could move your body in any way and be guaranteed to lose weight or be healthy or whatever, how would that be? Can you guess what they always said?
What?
Dancing.
Oh my gosh, these are my people. Dancing,
right?
breaking it out.
The most feminine thing we can do is move.
Yeah.
It's movement. It's not exercise.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important distinction in language, right? Because exercise has that, like, you're going to the gym, you're doing those linear, like, up and down movements, which, there's a time and a place for that, but women are not that always. Women are fluid, women are flow, women are, wild, right? And so dancing is something that they always responded, well, I would just dance. And it's like, okay, so just dance then, because that is what's going to keep you hooked into moving your body, right? Is when you're doing something that you absolutely love to do, rather than, like, the linear kind of like boring treadmill-y type movements. Not that I have anything against treadmills. I'm kind of roasting treadmills right now. I actually secretly you'll never catch me on one.
Totally. I love that so much. And it really is like, it's whatever you up. And The other piece of this too that's really interesting is I have a daily movement practice that I do every single day, 7 days a week,
Yep.
30 minutes a day, rain or shine. There will be a windstorm, trees are falling down. I'm outside and my
Yep.
practice is that I walk. I walk every day.
Same.
And it's really interesting because Elizabeth of, 4 or 5 years ago would have been like, "Why would you go for a walk? Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't burn enough calories. That's the
Right.
like, what's the point of that? You're too busy." All these
Right.
things. And my walk, I've been doing it consistently every day for the last couple of years. I can honestly say that just walking
Yeah.
has completely changed my life.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes with movement, we put so much pressure on ourselves because you read in the health magazine, like, oh my gosh, I have to do 3 days of cardio and 2 days of strength training and then 4 days of stretching.
Right.
And then it's like, of course, we just get overwhelmed and we don't do it. Or
Yeah.
we go all in for a couple weeks
Yeah.
and then we get injured and then we have to stop and take a break, or we go all in and then we fall off the wagon
Yeah.
and then we're beating ourselves up. And I'm kind of like, we're so many women, it's like we are positioned to fail at this game,
Oh
so
yeah.
like let's change the game.
Let's change the game. Let's set ourselves up for success, not for failure. I
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
agree. My walking's my thing too. I go every morning, same like you, rain or shine. My thing wasn't so much walking isn't going to burn enough calories or anything like that. Mine was more I would let the weather dictate, right? It was like, oh, it's raining, I can't go outside. Oh, it's cold, I can't go outside. Now I'm like, wow, bring it on, bring it on. Bring it
Oh
on.
my God, you are my hero because, girlfriend, this is why we connect. I am the same way. I'm like, can we all stop using the weather as an excuse? Like,
Yeah,
we live on a planet that has weather.
weather.
Like,
Yeah,
so can we just befriend the weather? Like, don't let the weather impact whether you're going to have a good day or a bad day, or
yes,
if you're going to take care of yourself or not.
right.
Do your thing. So I love that you're just like that's cool that you were able to break through that, because so many of my clients say that to me too. They're like, I just can't do it when it's cold. And I'm like,
Cool.
just bundle up,
Yeah.
get 20 layers. Like,
It's so true. It's so true. Oh my gosh, I have so many stories around that, but that's for later or another day, maybe for your podcast. Today is all about you. So I would love for you to share with us your story about how you got into this world in the first place, right? Like how you got into healthy living and creating these programs and this podcast and everything for women to help support them. You have a very powerful story. And so I think it's really important for women to hear, because I think sometimes too, it's like, oh, it's good for them because, they already have all this information. They already have all this knowledge. And so, like I've got this gap, so I don't know how to do this. And so, like I'm not going to. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. I did not start there. I was like 60 pounds overweight and I was a mess physically. Right. And you have a story as well. So I would love for you to, share with our audience where you came from and what got you here. And we'll go from there.
yeah, thank you for the opportunity to share my story. I agree with you. It's powerful when you can hear other women's journeys and kind of how they overcame some struggles. So I grew up in the dance world. I fell in love with dance as a little girl. When I was 11 years old, I proclaimed, I am going to be a professional dancer when I grow up. I just had this fire in my heart for dance, and it was so beautiful. But part of being in the dance world is you're constantly comparing yourself to other bodies in the room, and you're in front of a mirror all day long, like constantly critiquing yourself in the mirror. And whether you're a dancer or not, I think as just a female in our society, we can all relate to that feeling of like comparing yourself to other people, wanting to look a different way. And for me, what happened is it started in high school, where I started to struggle with disordered eating. And how that kind of started for me is that I had this mindset of, okay, if I want to be a professional dancer, I need to have my body be like as thin, and it was like thin and strong and lean and toned and like all the boxes.
Right.
And so it started with me getting really obsessive over my food and looking at the calorie content and what I was eating. And I also started to really start to like berate myself when I would eat like a cookie. And then it would cause me to feel so much guilt and shame. And so I started to just have this really weird, dysfunctional relationship with food. And I went to college in New York City. I moved to New York I grew up in Denver, Colorado. I moved to New York when I was 18 for dance to study dance in college. And that is where my disordered eating really reached its peak. And what would happen is that I would wake up in the morning and I would just be thinking, okay, what am I going to eat today? What am I not going to eat today? What did I eat yesterday? Oh, I have dinner plans tonight. I got to have a smaller lunch. Okay, so I had a bad eating day yesterday. I need to go run 5 miles today. And it consumed me. It consumed me and it was extremely extremely painful.
Yeah.
And what would happen with me is throughout the day, I never fully like restricted with like anorexia. I never did that. I never was bulimic. I never purged. But what my cycle was is that I was so obsessive over food. It would come usually in the evenings where I would start to eat something that I felt already guilty about. So
Right.
that's part of the problem, right? And so I would tell myself, okay, you can just have two cookies. You're going to be good and just have two cookies. And then I would start to eat more and I would binge and I would eat past fullness and I just felt that mentality of like screw it. I just messed up. I was bad. I was definitely in that like binary thinking of like this is good and
Black
this is
and
bad and I'm being bad. And
white.
so I struggled with binge eating. And it's interesting because nowadays it's titled binge eating disorder. But back in my 20s, that title actually didn't even exist.
Mm,
But that's absolutely what I struggled with.
mhm,
So it was during this time period where I was also really struggling with constantly needing external validation that I am worthy,
mhm.
that I am beautiful, that I am desirable, that I'm lovable. And so I would go to a club because, I'm in New York City going to the clubs. And if,
Woo!
yeah, exactly. I have my short shorts on. And if I got a lot of attention from men, I was having a great day. I felt very loved, very desirable, very worthy. Say if I went to a club and I didn't get that attention, I started to say, "What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? I must not be beautiful enough. I must need to lose more weight. I must need to do this." Right?
Mhm.
So that's just one example, but it was just this sense of my worth and my enoughness was always based outside of me.
Yeah.
And I remember even being aware of that and kind of being frustrated by that, but I couldn't get out of it. It
Mhm.
was really like this cycle I was in.
Yeah.
So during this time period in college, I lost my father very tragically, and my father took his own life. And I was very, very, very close to my dad, like daddy's little girl, extremely, extremely close. And his suicide was completely unexpected. Like we knew that he was, having a hard time. He was definitely depressed. He was struggling with anxiety, but he was working on it. And I had talked to him the night before, and so this experience was heartbreaking. It was devastating. It was earth shattering. And so I remember during this time, I flew back to Colorado and I was home for a little bit, and I was just like wallowing in this grief and definitely self-pity of just like, oh my God, like how am I going to even move forward in the world without my dad?
Mhm.
And I remember having this like really pivotal pivoting day in January. It was like a cold day in January. And it was like this very conscious choice that came into my brain because at that point I was kind of thinking to myself, and this is like my 20 something year old self's thoughts. The universe has dealt me this permission slip. Like this horrific thing happened to you, and you can actually use this as an excuse for the rest of your life as to why you didn't measure up. Like that was the actual thought in my brain. And there was this day in January where I made this conscious choice. I said, Elizabeth, you can give up. You can move back home from New York City. You can move back to Colorado. You can give up on your dream of being a professional dancer. Clearly, it's not working out great for you. And you can just play small. Or you can choose life. You can choose to not squander this opportunity, this one precious life that you have been given, and that you could move forward into the world in a way that would make your dad so freaking proud. And so that day I chose life, and it's a crazy story because I remember it. It was like an intentional choice. It was like, I'm going to live, and I'm going to live big, and I am going to really dive deeper into healing my relationship with my body and food and all the other pieces that came with that. And then fast forward years later, I get married, I get pregnant with my first child, who is a little girl. And when I had this little beautiful little girl, I realized I have a little bit more work to do in my relationship with myself, because I do not want this little girl to grow up hating her body. I do not want her to grow up feeling at war with herself. And so I'm a firm believer that it's not enough to like tell your kids or, read the books or do the journal. It's like you have to live it and you have to embody it. And that your action is the best way that they're going to learn. So, over the course of many years and getting a lot of support through therapy, support groups, coaches, I am at this level where I feel totally confident and comfortable in my skin. And really those steps that I took to heal myself are the methodology that I turned into my 12-week confident feminine body program that I now help women to also kind of build that sense of self-worth from the inside out, because I know what that's like to just live where all of the external stuff is just teeter-tottering your energy throughout the day, and helping them to really get back in alignment with their truth so they can live powerfully and authentically.
Wow, that's such a powerful story. Thank you for sharing all of that with us. And I'm really sorry about your dad. And it's tragic when we experience things like that. I lost my mom, 6 years ago, and it those things can be catalyst moments for us where we can choose a path at that time to say, like, yeah, like the one that you chose, right? I can stay in this environment and continue to live the life that I was living, or I can do something different. I can choose a different path and empower myself and, continue on the path that you were actually given in the first place. And sometimes we need that rattle, unfortunately, or
That
fortunately.
just gave me chills, what you just said, like the path you were given. I just got like goosebumps.
Whew, truth. Yeah. Truth bumps. Yeah, right. Well, I mean, grateful that you chose that path, and now here you are really helping other women do the same. And what I like the most about what you said is, and I don't know if this is true for you when you enroll clients, but when I enroll clients, usually the number one part of, well, maybe the number two or three reason why they want to work with me, is because they have somebody in their life, like a child, a daughter or a son or something like that, that they want to be a better example for. And they know, like you just said, like they've read the books, they've done this, they've done that, but there's still that little piece where it's like, ugh, you know what though, I'm not fully embodied in this. Like that's what you're talking about, right? Is embodiment, right?
Yeah.
I'm not fully embodied in this. This is like knowledge in my brain, but I'm still falling off the wagon, whatever it is, whether it's the health element of it or the spirituality element of it or whatever. They're falling off the wagon because there isn't that like sort of embodiment. There isn't that full buy-in of it, right? And when that happens, that's still tying it to an external thing. And I want us to loop back on that conversation about going to external sources in order for us to have that validation. I think sometimes that's okay when you're first starting out on something, right? Because it's like sometimes you need that. You need that depending on where you are in your journey, right? Sometimes you need a little something on the outside in order to pull you through, in order to, it's like that light, that beacon, that's something, just depending on where you are, right? To
Yeah, that's a good
lift you
point.
out, right? I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said, yes, that's such a good point.
And then from there, then you need to switch it so that you're doing it for yourself and not for others. However, being an example for our children is the best thing that we can do, rather than just, telling our kids to eat broccoli. We need to eat broccoli and just be the person who eats broccoli, right? We
Oh
need
my
to
gosh, that
be
darn broccoli.
that, but you know what I mean? Like, we need to
Yes.
be the person who meditates. We need to be the person who moves our body. We need to be the person who goes out for a walk in the weather, no matter what, rather than just telling our kids and expecting them to behave or do something when we're not modeling that, right?
Yes, and kind of along those lines, it's interesting that we're talking about this, mother-daughter or parent-child dynamic too, is that one thing to keep in mind is, so my mother, I'm very close with her. When I was growing up, she never once critiqued my body, ever. She loved on me, she filled me up, but here's the thing, she constantly critiqued her body.
Right.
I remember going into dressing rooms with her and her just, I
Mm.
remember looking at this beautiful woman
Right.
in the dressing room as my mama and being like, she's so beautiful. Like all I saw was her beauty, and
Yeah.
all she could do was point out all of her faults and the cellulite and the loose skin or the spider veins or whatever it was.
Right.
And it really upset her. And so it's really important too that because sometimes I think in this work, I've heard women say like, oh no, it's fine. Like I don't critique my kids' bodies. And I'm like, no, it starts with you. They're
Yeah.
watching how you interact with you,
Yeah.
and they're learning that.
Right.
Right. So my mom, of course, it was not intentional. She was a freaking amazing mama.
Yeah.
But what was that message? That message was that I am not beautiful. I'm not desirable in this current shape that I'm in, and that it also is this message that fat is bad, that it's this like evil thing to be feared. And of course that was not her intention at all, but
Right.
again, these are the messages that are part of the layering of why we struggle with the things that we struggle with. Is it's
Yeah.
family stuff, ancestral stuff, it's societal, it's obviously all of our life experiences. So part of what you're saying, Krisha, too, is like it's so helpful to have a coach and a mentor to help you through that too, because it can just feel so overwhelming and you can just feel like I don't even know where to start. Or and a good coach will even help you to identify and see those things that you can't even see,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, because it's all your blind spots and shadow material. Yeah, of course.
Oh yeah, all of those shadows.
All the shadows. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's so fascinating, what you just shared about your mom and how she was just, critiquing her own body, and like, where, so let's go there. Like, let's talk about that. Like, let's talk about where these messages are coming from, right? Because both of us have the I think when we had our original getting to know you first date conversation. um you said something about like, I don't do diets, I don't agree with diets or anything like that. You were kind of like just stating your stance, and I was like, hey, by the way, my first program was called Fuck Dieting, right? And you were like, okay, good, I'm in. And so the philosophy behind that is, not to be irreverent, although that is kind of what it is, but it is to say that whole system is broken. It's toxic. We need to crush it, crush it, crush it. And so I started my nutrition business in 2015. So I was in school 2013, 14, around all around there. Like, my son was born in 2011. So that's really when the journey started for me. And I started with the weight loss and the diet pills and all of that kind of stuff, and I was like consumed by all of that, right? And then when I went to nutrition school, I was like, oh, wait a minute, it was holistic nutrition, and it was like, oh, you mean there's a whole other way here? And that whole other way was not being taught out there at all. And I remember I was super ahead of the curve, and just like my predecessors before me, talking about gut health, talking about, like all of these smoothies, green smoothies, all of that kind of stuff. Nobody else is really talking about it. And I remember like shouting about it, being like, guys, like this is the way that we need to do this stuff. And but the narrative out there, like, and when I mean out there, I mean like on commercials, on adverts, on Facebook ads, like diet programs, the most popular ones out there, they were not advocating for any of that stuff. And my colleagues and I were just like, you got to do it in a different kind of way. Now I'm noticing, like all these years later, almost a decade later, that there's much more of an awareness, I think, around digestive health and gut health. I noticed that there's a new program out there. I haven't researched it because I haven't done nutrition coaching for a really long time. But it seems like for the millennials or something like that. And it's all about the healthy eating rather than like the dieting. So it seems to have that kind of philosophy. So it does seem like the narrative and the message is getting out there. However, it also isn't.
I
Right?
was gonna say you have to be a little cautious though. So what I've really dug up, and it's interesting. Yeah, when we first talked and I was like, I'm anti-diet, and it was a really cool moment because I was just like I was feeling Krisha out because I'm like, I just got to make sure we're aligned in this way. And
Is
she's
she
like,
my
oh girl, I got you. Um, but it is interesting. So the work that I do, and honestly, this is how I healed my relationship with food, my disordered eating relationship. It was really through intuitive eating, and that term like didn't, again, it wasn't even a term. It didn't exist. It's not like I researched it and someone taught it to me. It was intuitive. It was very intuitive for me. Um, but yeah, when we talk about like dieting, it's interesting because I think word's gotten out that diets are not great for you. And so what I've noticed in this space is there's actually a lot of sneaky like wellness
Mhm.
programs
Right.
that actually are still diets.
Right.
And so what
Okay.
I always just caution people to do is like, you are you're the best guru for your body is you.
Yeah.
And so, and not that you don't need coach, not that you don't need support, you do, but anyone who's asking you to not listen to your body and just like and like follow their plan and plug their stuff into yours,
Right.
it's like it's not a one size fits all world. And the thing with diet culture is I think I think one of the things that we need to really be honest about is that there's a lot of stigmas in our society about weight, and there's a lot of stigma
Yeah.
about people in larger bodies too. So it's interesting because a lot of us go into this where it's like, oh, um I want to shrink my body because in our society, like you were saying, through the commercials and the advertisements, what the package of goods that is sold to us is that if you are in a smaller body, you
Yeah.
will be happier, you will be successful,
Mhm.
you will be, wealthier, you will attract the right partner. But the reality is that if you don't do the inner work, which I
Yeah.
know you're so passionate about,
Yes.
is none of that's gonna matter. And I think I told you that there was a woman that came to me who had lost 45 pounds,
Yeah.
and she's like, "Elizabeth, I still feel horrible about myself."
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, because the weight actually wasn't your problem.
Mm.
The weight it's the inner work,
Yes.
right? That is required. And so, yeah, the dieting industry is this like billion-dollar industry, and it's
Yeah.
just it sets you multi-billion dollar.
Multi.
um
Yes.
it's more than one.
Yeah. Right. Billion.
Yeah. It really sets you up to fail. And just speaking like in like really broad terms, is there is the pendulum swings. And so there's the restriction, and whether that is you're, cutting out carbs, or it's just like a mental restriction, right? Like if you're telling yourself, I
Right.
can't ever have a donut, it is
Yeah.
the worst possible thing for
Right.
me to have a donut.
Right.
So any kind of restriction, whether it's physical or mental,
Yeah.
will lead to a sense of deprivation.
Yeah.
And that is just our biology. Because here's the thing, our cells don't know that you're intentionally restricting foods. They think that they're being exposed to a famine. So what your
Yes.
body is designed to do, it's such a beautiful, beautiful vessel. It's
Yeah.
designed to keep you alive. It's designed to make sure you stay here on this earth.
Right.
And so we try to restrict,
Yeah.
we get that really strong deprivation feeling. And in that feeling, you're going to start thinking about food all the time. Like the story I shared with you,
Yeah.
I was still eating, but I had so much mental restriction
Mhm.
happening. And what happened? I started to think more and more about food, because your
Yes.
body's going to think about food because you're not giving it enough nourishment.
Yeah.
So then you have the deprivation, which inevitably will lead you to that primal hunger instinct. And it's like imagining that you're underwater and you're kind of drowning, and then you get your head above water and you go like that.
Yeah.
That's what happens with food, right? Is we're like, "Oh my God, I fell off the wagon. Now I'm going to eat
All
everything."
the
And
things.
all the things. And then what happens? You feel bad.
Yeah.
You
And then
feel
you beat
like you
yourself up.
failed.
Yep.
Like you can't be trusted with your body. You can't be trusted with food, which then makes you go back on another diet again. So it is such
It's
a vicious,
insane.
nasty cycle.
It's insane. It is insane, insane, insane. Yep. And you did such a beautiful job of explaining it, right? Because that's exactly what it is. It's like, and it's a mental game. It's a mental, it's emotional game. Um, what I want to loop back to really quickly, just for those who are watching and listening, is what can you define what intuitive eating is for anybody who's not entirely sure what that term means?
Yeah. So it is a way. So, intuitive eating, the official like intuitive eating, there's 10 different principles that go along with it, but it's a combination of using your rational thoughts and your physical sensations. So, like really getting in attunement with your body. And the thought piece of it comes into it as well, but essentially there's 10 principles. And just to kind of quickly sum it up, um, it's really about listening to your hunger, honoring your hunger. Because how many times this is where the rational
Yeah.
thoughts come in. How many times do we say, well, wait, I can't be hungry,
Yeah.
I just ate an hour ago, nope, I
Right.
can't be hungry, I'm not going to eat.
Yeah.
So right there, we didn't listen to our body, right? So it's really listening to your body's hunger signals,
Yeah.
feeding yourself when you are hungry.
Yeah.
And a huge piece of it is about making peace with all foods. So all foods you have like a neutral energy about, because diet culture, it it demonizes certain foods and elevates other foods. And that's why when we eat a certain food, we feel that moral virtue of I'm being bad. So if you can really start to make peace with all foods,
Yeah.
and all foods have a neutral energy. You're not being bad when you eat a donut. You're not being good when you eat a salad. If everything is sort of neutral,
Yes.
it helps you to like make peace with the food. Because when you have a forbidden food,
Yeah.
what happens? I like to use this analogy. If Krisha, if you're a teenage girl and there's this boy that you are texting and you're hanging out with him, and I say, "Oh, Krisha, do not hang out with that guy. Like,
Oh yeah.
you're not allowed to go hang out with him. Do not stop texting."
Bye.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, "Screw you. I'm going to go do this." So this is what we do with the foods that we eat, is we tell ourselves, "Oh my God, I can never have that. I can never have French fries. Oh my God, I can never have that. I can never have it." Then when we finally have it, what happens? We freaking go crazy, because
Yeah.
it's this
And
idea
we
that
move in with the guy.
I'm never gonna exactly, I'm never gonna have this food again. So what if all food is available to you at all times? And this is not just like a mind trick to get you to eat less because that's not intuitive eating.
No.
It's really like trusting yourself, trusting, and then part of it too is listening to how the food feels in your body, right? And noticing, and then you can make choices, but you are entitled to make choices. So even if you eat something and you're like, okay, that made me feel like crap,
Yeah.
it's not that being a good intuitive eater means I'm never going to eat that food again because it made me feel like crap.
Yeah.
Being an intuitive eater actually is like noticing, okay, that made me feel like crap, but you know, and then next time you can make a choice because maybe you really enjoyed that food and it's okay for you to feel like crap. Does that make sense? Like, I know this sounds
Yes.
crazy.
No, it's not crazy at all. Well, to me, it's not crazy at all because I understand it. I actually have a little program called Make Peace with Food. It's so funny. That's why I was like laughing when you said that. I'm like, yeah, that's what it is. It's making peace with food, and that's why this podcast is Cabernet and Kale, because it's about a balance, right? It's about balancing out these things, listening to what your body is saying, and I found that a lot of women were disconnected, are totally disconnected to their body, even the women that I work with now, disconnected to their body, right? There's no it's like head cognitive thinking, and then, oh yeah, we have one of these, right? And so there's
Totally.
that embodiment piece again, right? Looping it back to that. And the intuitive eating part is connecting your head and your body, your heart and your mind, right? It's connecting those two pieces together, and so that you start to notice what foods make you feel good, what foods don't make you feel good. And I think that's where diets kind of steer us wrong, because it's like they're saying carbs are wrong, but they're not necessarily, because we
You
actually
need
need
carbs.
them.
You need energy. You
We
need
need them.
energy.
I know. And it's like, but what kind, but are you paying attention to how your body feels in the carbs? And then there's another layer of investigation that could go into this, because if you eat a food and you're finding that you don't feel good, you're bloated or something like that when you eat it, okay, that requires some sort of a level of investigation. Is it a food intolerance? Is it a digestive issue? Are you just not digesting that food properly? Do you need to have um a gut protocol? Do you need to have a digestive enzyme? Could it have just could were you super stressed that day? Right? Like, what was your emotional state that day? That's why I like food journals, which was like the nemesis. I don't know if you have your clients do food journals, but I used to do that as part of the protocol in order to help my clients start to make that connection. It wasn't to track anything, but it was just to make that connection. Okay, so you notice now when you're having this, or they would go hours and hours without eating because they were busy and they wouldn't hear the cues of the
That's
hunger,
huge. Yeah, that's
right?
huge.
So
Mhm.
that's where the journaling was super helpful, was for them to start making that connection between what was going on in their body and the behaviors that they were doing, right? I think that's where the intuitive piece comes in, right? Because it's like, how are you feeling? How do you feel about this? And okay, so let's make an observation. Yesterday you ate some potato chips. Okay, cool. Then you had that cascade of thoughts come up with the potato chips. Oh my God, I can't believe I did this. I'm a failure. Look at me. Like, I used to think, I used to just like imagine the food going straight to my stomach or straight to my thighs. And that was where my obsessive thinking would come in, is like, oh, I would just feel gross. Like, I would feel
And
gross and heavy. And it's like, oh, it's all there. It's all there. It's all there. Right. And so, making that connection and intuitively knowing that is really, really, really important. And then the next day, or whenever you eat chip, like that then sends that cascade of thoughts going through your head about how you're a bad person, you failed, you're a failure, whatever those thoughts are that are coming through your head about what you say about yourself when you do something bad, quote unquote, right?
Mhm.
That creates a fight or flight stress response in your body, which then is probably maybe what's causing you to feel like crap after you've eaten the food, right? Like, it causes the digestive issues. So we need to look at this from all angles. Like, it's a prism, right? It's not that black and white. And take into effect or into account, I should say, that emotional piece, the mental piece, the spiritual piece, the physical piece, all of it, in order for us to really start to tune into our bodies and what our body likes and what our body doesn't like, right? And not make a story about it as well, right? Like, oh my God, I ate the chips. Now I'm a bad person. And now they're all on my thighs. And oh my gosh, now I have to like not eat anything for the next 6 months kind of thing, right? I'm
Yeah.
exaggerating, but you know what I mean? And then the next day, right? So I think we need to calm all of that down and start to really, like you said, you be more intuitive and feel into, what is it that, how is this food making me feel? What are my thoughts that I'm thinking? What is the whole entire
Yeah.
element of this here, so that we can get a good understanding of the big picture and
Mhm.
start to break each of those pieces down. Because what happens if you eat the chips and then recognize that it was the thoughts about what you were telling yourself about yourself that was causing the digestive issue? And
Oh
what
my
it,
gosh, and there's been so much research about that too,
yeah,
that like if you're eating something and you're stressed about eating it, it's
yeah,
going to be a lot harder for your body to digest it.
totally. Yes,
So I
because we're
think I think
stressed. Because
I think
our digestive system doesn't work when we're like it's sympathetic, right? When we're in the sympathetic state.
yes. Yes. And I think like kind of what I would say to as like an overarching thing of what you just shared is that you know what I'd say? It's not like let's actually not even talk about the food. Let's talk about like the thoughts. Let's talk about your mindset. Let's talk about your stress level, how
Yeah.
you're taking care of yourself, how
Yes.
you're setting boundaries of your
Yes.
time, your energy,
Yes.
how
Yes.
you're nourishing your life force. All of that. It's funny because I feel like in the wellness space, there is like this crazy laser focus on food. And yes, of course, food is important,
Sure.
but
You gotta eat.
it's like 10% of
Yeah.
everything, right? Like we don't need to get so obsessive over it. I would say put your energy and your work into all of the other things, which is this voice of the inner critic who is criticizing you. And also, I just want to say for anyone who's like, "Oh yeah, I feel that inner critic voice when I'm eating the chips." I also want to say that is not your fault. That is because we live in diet culture that
Yes.
is constantly telling you
Exactly.
that you should feel bad about doing that.
Yeah.
So give yourself so much
Yes.
compassion
Yes.
because I think sometimes we're like, oh, well, I'm just not good at this or I'm just a negative person. It's like, no, that's actually not your truth. That's actually not you.
Yeah.
That's just you living in this society. So it's just exceptionally powerful to bring your awareness into this non-diet space and like holistic space and then doing the baseline inner work before you even try to tackle the food piece, I
Yeah.
think, because
I
I think that is like the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yep. I always would say, like, it's got nothing to do with the kale, everything to do with what's going on between your ears. And they
Oh my
hated
God, I love you. I love
they
you.
hated they were like, no, just tell me what to eat. And I'm like, no.
Yes, I know people are like, if you just give me this and I'll follow this, I will do this. And it's like, no, we got to go inside. We got to go in your heart. We got to do, it's like, you got to, this is the cliche, but it's so true. You have to feel to heal.
Yes.
And we cannot numb out. We cannot, the other thing I see a lot is like, we want to use our body as a metaphor
Yeah.
for all the things that we feel like we're lacking in our lives. So I always tell my clients, like, when you feel like you're beating yourself up, you're beating up your actual physical body, like, oh, I see cellulite, or oh, I see this, or
Hmm.
this, oh my God, this wrinkle's here.
Yeah.
Start to just notice like what is actually present in your life right now. What are you actually feeling? Because if you kind of dive deeper, about 10 layers deeper, it's usually like, I'm actually feeling really exhausted right now, or
Yeah.
I'm feeling really stressed, and it's easy to use our body as this metaphor. And it's like this thing that we always can fix and we can always be better. But what if we held space for just being in this moment, being in our bodies, and practicing that? It doesn't even have to be acceptance, because I know some of us are like, if you really are struggling in your body, acceptance might feel too far away, love might feel too far away, even body neutrality, just that sense of I'm here, I'm breathing into my body, I'm breathing into my heart space, and what am I really feeling? Oh my gosh, I'm feeling so disconnected from my husband right now. I need to connect with him. That's why I'm you know what I mean? Like there's always a deeper layer, and I think that's what Christian and I are just trying to like bring to light is that the food is there, the body is there, but there's always a deeper layer.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. All right. Well, we're at time here. And I know we could go on forever.
We're just getting started.
We're just getting started. We're just getting warmed up, right? Because this is a big conversation, and just thinking about your mom in the change room and the narrative in her mind about her body and the varicose veins and all those kinds of things. Like who said that those things are wrong, right? And that's exactly what you're saying right now, is that there's a narrative out there that doesn't, it's not real, it's not true. Somebody somewhere said it, and now women everywhere, and men too, but especially young girls and stuff, are just like running their lives on that. And that is what I know you're doing an amazing job at trying to shift for women, through your podcast and through your program. So thank you so much. I honor you with this work that you're doing, and you come from experience, which is amazing, right? So thank you for sharing everything that you did today, and showing up so powerfully, and being such an advocate for this work. I really, really, really appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, you are so welcome. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for sharing this space with me, and I love what you're doing as well. It's so cool to meet other women who are just in alignment with this energy. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So, Elizabeth, where can people find you?
Yes. So as we mentioned, my podcast launched today. So go find that on Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your podcast. It's Confident Feminine Body Podcast. And if anyone watching or listening wants to connect with me and learn more about how I might be able to help them in my Confident Feminine Body program, they can just go to talktoelizabeth.com and they can book a free body confidence breakthrough session with me, and we can kind of see if I'm the right person to serve them.
Amazing. I love it. And we'll put all the links in the show notes as well, to make it easy for people to find you.
Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate having you as a guest. I can't wait to have you on again, and be a guest on your show too.
Yes, I was going to say, you're going to be on my show soon. So we'll get that scheduled as well. I'm super excited to have you.
Yeah, me too. Me too. We're just going to keep spreading this message.
Yep, for sure.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you to you as well, dear watcher and listener of the Cabernet and Kale podcast. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you on the next episode. Bye for now.